Over in Gauteng, our reporter Nqobile Madlala is monitoring the influx of primary school pupils. And like elsewhere in the country, a major concern is whether young people would in fact be able to follow safety protocols. As anyone with young children knows, they are incredibly unpredictable. Nqobile, a good morning to you. How are things looking out there?
Well, so far it seems like the young ones are in fact following those COVID protocols. We've seen them masked up. We've seen them social distance in class as well as sanitize. A number of times washing hands. In fact, the principal here was even shouting that it's enough now of washing hands. So it seems like they're very eager to follow, but also very happy to be back at school in full capacity. But just to understand in terms of whether this is working or not, we are now joined by Elijah Mhlanga, who's the spokesperson for basic education. Sir, in terms of what you have monitored today, do you think the schools are ready to have all the kids back in class?
Good morning. Well, not all the schools are ready. Some are ready, others are not. Like this school, it seems they are ready. They say they have been preparing since we made the announcement, and we have seen how the learners have quickly come into the school, having been scanned, having been checked if they have a mask, and they walked into class, and the teaching and learning is happening as we speak. So it seems that the early announcement has assisted schools to make preparations, and we hope that many more will do the same, although we are not expecting all of them to follow suit, especially if they actually don't have the resources to receive all the learners at once.
Talking about those resources, what sort of stumbling blocks have you seen with other schools at this point?
No, it's space. You know, you look at the school, it's a big school. There's so many blocks. They can afford to have 5 or 6 classrooms of one grade, which means they're able to socially distance their learners without any challenges, and they're able to adhere to the requirements. Other schools don't have that because their sizes are different, and they're only able to have learners socially distancing properly if the class is cut in half, which means the rotation system must continue in those particular instances.
And of course, that with social distancing comes the sanitizing, all those protocols. Do we have the capacity in this case to make sure that all these kids have the sanitizers and as well as other places that they have?
Well, in terms of the supplies, that was sorted out already. I mean, we have some experience of having seen the amounts that would be needed in schools from last year already when we reopened schools in June, and the subsequent months up until the beginning of this year when schools resumed. So schools are able to also manage with their budgets that are allocated to them, and we don't have a challenge in that regard because schools also monitor the use of the material such as sanitizers, which is given to them in bulk. But we've also seen schools keeping additional masks for learners that come to school without a mask. So in terms of managing the physical environment, schools are managing in that regard, and we don't think that that should be a challenge.
And in terms of social distancing?
Social distancing is a challenge also because people forget. You need to make sure that you remind people to keep social distancing at all times. But inside a classroom, that is something that must really happen. But while it is happening, you also need to make sure that all the learners, the educators are also wearing their masks properly, because that's the biggest thing. You need to wear your mask properly, and we know too that our teachers have also got their vaccines, which is an additional measure in terms of protection of learners against COVID-19.
And of course, in talking about that vaccination, there were some vaccination hesitancy at this point. Perhaps just give an understanding in terms of how then are you going to monitor these teachers to make sure that to monitor their health, in essence, if they're not vaccinated?
We have a process in place. We also issued a circular last week to inform schools in terms of what they needed to do when their teachers were not vaccinated. We know that there are teachers who did not vaccinate because they were sick, just like the school principal in the school. She could not vaccinate because she had COVID. She was in hospital, and now she's going to get an injection. to protect themselves against COVID-19. So that's what we are doing to assist them, but we know others are hesitant. We'll continue to engage them to try to convince them to vaccinate without forcing them. We're not forcing them, but we are recommending strongly that they need to get a vaccine because it is part of the fight against COVID-19. But should there be no success in that regard, we have advised schools to look at ways of how they can be accommodated, because we also don't want to create an environment where some are vaccinated and others are not, and those that have vaccinated are afraid to work with those that have not vaccinated. So you don't want to create instability. What we know right now is that the majority are vaccinated because in terms of the target that we were looking at, for teachers in particular, we were vaccinated, a large majority of them. I think we are at 90% or so at the last count. It could be more now because more continue to vaccinate every day. So we are happy with the rate in that regard.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, you heard there, Naledi, it seems like the Department of Education is saying that things are going well, but they are also saying that there are challenges, and some of the challenges are that social distancing in some areas. So they have then suggested that there be a rotation in terms of a timetable, but also he's saying that there will be some monitoring and also emphasis in terms of the teachers that have not vaccinated,
right,
that they're not forcing them to, but they are looking in ways that it can be monitored.
Yeah, certainly an optimistic tone coming from the Department of Basic Education there. One wonders if it is shared by teachers and parents as well. But that is our reporter, Nqobile Madlala. Thank you so much to her.